stage, with credits ranging from the West End to the RSC. Currently starring in the Mousetrap at St. Martins Theatre. Best known for her roles in shows such as Dr Who and Eastenders, Louise is also a writer and director for audio and the stage. Hello Louise, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, really well. How lovely to speak to you.
Lovely to speak to you as well. And just to even start this podcast off with praising you, I can't help it just to say thank you for coming on and talking to me this evening when you're literally about to open in one of the shows, reopening theatre in the West End in the Mousetrap, and you've taken your time out to talk to me. So that is so hugely appreciated. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, treasure.
Fantastic. So I'd like to really go back to the beginning of your marvellous acting career, and I'd like to ask you, what is the first acting performance that you remember giving, and when did you realise that you wanted to work in this industry as a professional?
I played Little Miss Muffet when I was 4 years old. And
Wow.
rather brilliantly. And the parents, well, it would have been mums then. So this is 1955, 56,
Brilliant.
somewhere around there. And I stood the other side of the door after my exit, and I remember hearing the teachers and the parents cheering, clapping,
Oh,
laughing, and loving it, and thought, oh, I might do this forever. Then I wanted to be a tiller girl. You're probably far too young to know what a tiller girl is.
oh God, I feel embarrassed to
Okay,
say it, to
no,
agree with you there.
it's there used to be a program called Sunday Night at the London Palladium,
Mm.
and it opened and closed with maybe 20 chorus line. They'd have been called girls at the time, but young women, all exactly the same height, all in pink sequins, or with, those feather plumes coming out their bum. And if you can hear that, that's my dog's ears flapping. She's decided to come and join us. So I hope you don't mind the
Absolutely.
dog in the
Not a
background.
problem. More the
Yeah,
merrier.
she wants to go in my lap. She obviously can hear the friendly vibe going on. She wants to
We
be
love
part of
it.
it. Come here, come up here. Good girl. So if you want me to put her out, just say.
Not at all, no.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, so then I wanted to be a tiller girl, but then I realised you absolutely have to be chorus. There's no way you can completely shine on your own.
And we weren't having that.
We weren't having that. Then I wanted to be a concert pianist for a while, but I could never come to terms with reading music. I can play the piano, but I could never read music. I'm partly dyslexic, so, well, not partly. I am dyslexic. So musical notes are very difficult. They just jump around the page. And then I joined the amateurs at 12 in a play called Things Ain't What They Used to Be, a musical. And then at 15, they gave me Viola in Twelfth Night, and a year later, I got accepted into RADA.
That's a remarkable turnaround, isn't it? I love that journey.
Yes.
I'd love to touch on your time at RADA. What skills did you learn from your time training there that you still use in your work today?
Oh, it's the most fantastic training. We did everything from mime, improvisation, fencing, combat, masses of voice work, masses of text work. I didn't do one written piece when I was at RADA. It was entirely practical. The
Yeah.
only writing I did was off my own bat if I was doing research for a character. It's different now. They have to do all kinds of swatting.
Yeah,
But
you have to just get
get
the
up and do
degree.
it. Yeah, learnt
Absolutely,
by
I love that.
experience. But very soon after RADA, I went to the RSC, maybe 2 or 3 years after RADA, I went to the RSC for 3 years. And there, it was like a continuation of the training because we had sonic classes and voice classes, yoga classes.
Oh,
It was just glorious. I don't think I fully appreciated it then. But that text work, we worked in such depth with text about trithong vowels and, the way Shakespeare, the way you don't need any stage directions because you just have to be a bit of Sherlock Holmes on the text and you'll find out exactly what he wants from the text. It's the most beautiful thing once you get it. And then, of course, you put in masses of work and then have to make it look as easy as anything. And the easier you make it look, the more the audience enjoys it.
Absolutely. I mean, as you
Yeah.
said there, having that like a continuation of the training, because I think when people leave
Mm.
drama school these days, it's just, you're not necessarily cut loose, but you're definitely told that, when you're out in the wilderness, and that's just how it is. So to be able to have that environment where you continue to learn and develop with such fantastic actors and additional classes there. What was it like, being at a company so prestigious early on in your career and playing some major parts in those 3 years that you were there? Was that intimidating at all, or were you just so with this group for a reasonable amount of time and in those classes that it just the confidence came through that?
I went to play Jake Quinetta in Love's Labour's Lost, which is a beautiful but tiny part. It's about 26 lines. And I understudied maybe 5 or 6 major roles. And I think because I took the understudy duties very, very seriously,
Hmm.
and the directors paid us the courtesy of coming to see the understudy runs. And what I didn't realise then was that it was a kind of audition for my future. So the
Hmm.
next season, I didn't get offered understudy, I got offered major parts. So I think because I just worked, I don't really believe in luck. I think it's opportunity meeting preparation,
I love that.
and I think I was very prepared.
Hmm.
And
I,
Shakespeare's to this day, Shakespeare is my I love my love. I play I've got a one woman show called I Was Shakespeare's Mistress, which I'm going to tour later this year. At the moment, it's only got gigs in Hastings and Eastbourne, but I hope to take it further. And it's a kind of desert island discs of my favourite speeches, which I link together because this year marks 50 years in the business for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. May the 1st this year was my 50th. Yeah, 50th anniversary in the theatre. And I just kind of wanted to celebrate that, especially after lockdown. And I thought if I do, get this one woman show together and buy some decent audio equipment, even if we're only allowed to perform outside, I can still do it. So
Absolutely.
that's my plan anyway.
Well, I'd love to ask you, as you say there, Shakespeare's your love. I'd love to ask you if you have any tips for actors with working on Shakespeare, whether that be with, as you said, being Sherlock Holmes with the text, so breaking down the text, or learning Shakespearean lines. Now, some people really struggle with that, or just how to speak the verse. Any tips you have on Shakespeare?
What I do when I've worked with students, I've told them to pick a sonnet that speaks to them, and then we work for hours. I mean, maybe about 6 hours on those lines. That very short, you know, um, and play it several different ways. And you can teach the whole of Shakespeare through one sonnet. And it's to do a lot with listening to the musicality of the verse, where there's a hard consonant or a soft consonant, whether there's a long vowel or a short one, where the editor has chosen to put the punctuation. I'd always go for Arden myself. I think they're the best publishers of Shakespeare. And don't be afraid to ask either, because it takes you have to really work at it. But once you fall into that musicality of it. I was reading Juliet when I was about 10 or 11, and there's a little passage in that where she's imagining Romeo coming to her that night. And she says, when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars. And he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun. And just that little section it's just so beautiful. But die is a male orgasm and stars is a female orgasm. You never taught this at school. And when
No.
he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars. That means so much more once you have those facts at your fingertips. And you can imbue it with so much more sensuality and sexuality. It's not just a young girl's dreaming. It's her really anticipating losing her virginity in the most... Well, I think it touches the divine in a divine way, in a celestial way.
I love that.
So if Shakespeare could only be taught like that, if you could just get over the giggling, let them have their giggle, let them have their flirt time, and then really get down to the nitty gritty, it would be so much more interesting for them.
Yeah, I think the most exciting way of learning Shakespeare at GCSE level in English is watching the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet. That's about as exciting as it gets, which is it's such a strong, vivid version of the piece. But bar that, it's just sitting down, reading the text, not getting up. Even in English classes, I know, because they're English, so why would you stand up and act in English? So I think that if you investigated the text and you got your mouth around it and you spoke the words, there's so much more to it. And I think that that little passage that you spoke there just reminded me of when I was told something about Shakespeare that stuck with me for ages, is that a lot of people approach Shakespeare as if it's William Shakespeare's words, which they are, but they're Juliet's words. He's writing from Juliet's perspective, and that she's chosen to describe losing her virginity in that celestial manner, and that almost shows her like youthful naivety about what that might be like, or her visions of love, the way she views love. And once I made that connection in my head, Shakespeare became so much more approachable. It wasn't academic anymore, it was character work.
I agree with everything you've said, 100%. But I was reading those words before I knew all that, but somewhere in me, I did know all that. Do you know what I mean? Because I connected with all those soft consonants without knowing that's what I was doing, just listening to the lyricism of it.
It's that genius level of writing that is just hasn't really been
replicated.
It's like such in-depth Shakespearean talk. The dog's like, shut up, let's move on. I love that. It is that genius level writing though, isn't it? It touches that human instincts. It's just remarkable.
It's any writer that writes in a way that you go, oh, I wish I'd said it like that. When you know exactly what they're trying to say, but they've put it into such language that you could never dream you'd never put those words together, but once they're together, that's the only way to say it.
I know, I get absolutely the same thing when I see some new writing at some of the theatres that I go to. Then I see plays and I go, why didn't I think of that? That's genius. I'd love to talk about Doctor Who, if briefly, and that was almost, I hate the term big break because you were doing such brilliant stuff before then, but it was sort of what put you in front of a mainstream audience. We could say it that way. How did you
It's
cope
the only
with...
time I've made a very deliberate career move. Because my agent said, right, we've got you where we want you in theatre, but you've only done bits and bobs for television. So I've been in the business about 5 years. And then she said, we're going to hold out for a TV series. And I went up for The Avengers, Angels, Survivors, and I got really close to all of them. But Pennant Roberts auditioned me for Survivors, and that didn't work. But he remembered me and called me in for Doctor Who. So that's how Doctor Who happened, thanks to another audition.
I love that. That when those, as you said, it was the the sort of, what did you say? Something meets preparation because you didn't. Was it luck meets preparation? But you said something. Oh dear, my memory's failed me. That was a wonderful phrase.
Opportunity meeting preparation.
Yeah, based on what you did in those previous auditions, it was almost another one of those moments.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, the viewing figures still for Doctor Who are really, really high. And looking at the viewing figures back then, when I was doing some research before I spoke to you, staggering amounts of people watched the show with at that time. how did you cope with the pressure? Because it was a big show by the time you were on it as well. It wasn't when it first launched, when it was almost, a risk. It came out of nowhere. How did you cope with the pressure of working
It
on
was in a
such an iconic
sort of
show?
it was in a sort of transitionary phase from a
Mm.
children's TV show to an adult viewing, and I think I was part and parcel of pushing it into the adult viewing. They wanted, to quote the Philip Hinchcliffe, the producer at the time, they wanted something for the dads. It's a very sexist
Right.
attitude to employing me. But there wasn't an enormous amount of pressure. I found that EastEnders fame, when that happened, I found that quite difficult because it's a different kind of, because you're in someone's living room 3-4 times a week,
Yeah.
and then the omnibus on a Sunday. People really think they know you. And because I was playing, for want of a better phrase, an ordinary person, so working class mum running a cafe, um, people I think, thought I was much more approachable. If you're playing an alien from another planet,
Yeah.
warrior of the Sever team, or glamorous estate agent in Jersey, or my other parts have been just that slightly bit removed from reality. But the whole nature of soap is that it's trying to reflect back the lives of the people that are watching. So yeah, I felt that I did find that quite invasive. And there were days I wouldn't go out, and I'd do my weekly shop when the omnibus was on, because I thought, well,
The
any
people that would
hardcore fans are
recognise you
going to
for
be in front of the
yeah,
television set.
nicely timed. I love that. That's fantastic. I mean, soaps have so many unique circumstances within them, and one of them that I've not been on a soap yet, but the idea of the constant lines there are to learn if you're a series regular on soaps, like you were in the DeMarco family. For it was like over 200 episodes of EastEnders, and the constant line learning and the changing of the lines, and nearly every scene you're in having massive stakes, and very little time on set to go again. How difficult was that to keep up with from an acting perspective?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think sometimes the directors of soaps don't really get an actor's process, because we didn't get rehearsal. We
Hmm.
had to arrive with it learnt, and if we didn't, we were really bollocked. I watched a couple of. I mean, I'm such a good girl. I had it learnt, but so our only rehearsal really was the camera rehearsal. So we arrive with it learnt. We're told where to stand. The camera people have a rehearsal, and then they go for a take. So I would use the camera rehearsal to experiment, try things, push the emotion a bit further, whatever. And more than once, a director would come to me and go, "No, no, 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 save it for the take." Like you could only do it
Yeah.
once or something. Our job is to be able to grab it, recreate it, hold on to it, develop it. It would never go backwards once you've hit it. It can only go forwards. And I don't think that was realised at all with some television directors.
Mhm.
And I found, because we have, you probably know this, we have a short-term memory and a long-term memory. You only exercise your short-term memory. I mean, I can quote you audition speeches I did when I was 15, but I couldn't tell you sometimes when I was doing television the first scene of the day. Once it's done, gone, and I move on to the next one.
You see,
Because
I
you,
couldn't
you
tell you either, but but anyway. Oh dear. I just take the chance to embarrass myself whenever I can. This is a very cathartic experience for myself. I use this to interview industry professionals and as therapy. It's a double whammy for me. Um, I love that. You spoke about you briefly mentioned that idea of sort of that soap fandom being quite intense at times. Another thing that I think's people at least talk about actors worrying about that are on soaps for a period of time is about being only being known for that role in the future, of never being able to play anything else without them seeing you as whoever it might be, whether that's in EastEnders, Hollyoaks, or Emmerdale, or whatever. Were you ever worried about that, of being at least remembered just for that role, or even just typecast as the working class mum, or matriarch?
No, I was never really worried about that. I mean, theatre's my main love, and it opens the door really to quite a few theatrical roles because you put bums on seats when you've been in a soap. People will come and see you in the theatre. I do think you have to choose, and I don't think I did. I do think you have to choose your next 2 years very carefully. And I didn't. I got greedy and I went for the money and I did panto and I did a couple of tours that were okay, but I could have chosen better, had better offers for less money, you know.
Mm,
So yeah, I'm not very proud of the way either I or my then agent handled that post soap time. But it was a strange time for me. I felt very humiliated by the way I left the show. I was asked if I'd stay on for 5 years and take over the pub, become the linchpin family, which I agreed to in the November. And then in the December, there was a new producer.
mm,
And by the February, I was out.
right.
And so my life got kind of turned upside down. And I wonder if one of they wanted to make Rosa racist. Um, and I don't have problems with playing a racist if the uh, content of the whole piece is an anti-racist message.
Yes.
You know, I'm happy to play the baddie. But when you're in a soap, people, it's a different form of identification. People think you are that person. They don't get that you're being somebody else. And I have as you know, a mixed race. My eldest boy is dual heritage. Well, my youngest is as well. Just
Mm,
one is half West Indian, the other is half white South African.
mm.
So I jokingly call it my very own Benetton advert. And they're very beautiful, and they're different dads, obviously. And I thought, I'm not going to go on EastEnders playing a racist with
No.
the family that I have. It's just not, the knock-on effect of that would be appalling.
I think that's it's such an immensely dangerous plot line to write in for someone, and character arc to write in for someone in any drama, let alone a
Yeah.
soap, as you say there. And I think from what you said about that producer, it sounds to me, for I don't know if they were male or female, but for want of a better term and for better language, it almost sounds like you went in, it was like a dick swinging contest of, I'm the new producer, so I'm going to do something big because look at me. That's not to diss producers. I love producers. Please work with me. But but the
I think I do think that producers come in with their broom, don't they? And
yeah,
inevitably there are some casualties, and I completely accept that the DeMarcos were the casualty of the new producer. However, I I wonder why we were, and I think maybe me saying I'm sorry I can't play a racist, and they said, well, we haven't even written the script yet, and I said, well, exactly, let's just
well,
nip it
yeah.
in the bud, shall we? I think that nothing's bigger than the program, and if they think the program should go one way and an actor comes in and goes I think that actor gets axed.
Well, I think that that must be something you can at least look back on with pride in terms of your stance on that, because that's just I think that's really unreasonable that if that was motivated that way. But I think you should be proud of yourself for taking a stand there, because a lot of
Oh,
actors
thank
wouldn't.
you.
Well, a lot of actors, wouldn't have done, and for the right reasons as well, for fear of their jobs and things. And I think hopefully pressures in the industry in that regard are getting better these days. You still hear these horror stories that come out, and but at least these people are getting called out these days. And hopefully that I can't imagine a plot line like that being written in a prime time soap nowadays. But unless it was, of course, an anti-racist message.
Well, I think it probably would have had an anti-racist message. I can't see them,
Yeah, of
championing
course, yeah,
UKIP
yeah.
or anything, but I just didn't want my character to be casualty of that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the nature of soap writing being such major stakes, there's not much time for subtext in it. It's all out there that,
Subtlety, yes.
yeah, it's just, it's not the soap's forte, is it? That it could have been done bluntly, and well, it didn't happen, and things went differently, as you say.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'd love to talk about your audio drama work, because your work in Doctor Who, led to you working with the audio drama company Big Finish, and reprising that role, and you have a great relationship with them as an actor and as a writer. Um, I'd love to ask about, what are some of the positives of working in audio and audio drama, and it's such a huge area of the industry that I think more actors should go for. And do you have any tips for those wanting to get into that kind of work?
Well, the main plus is you don't have to learn the lines.
It's
I know
so
I'm
funny you
stating the
say that.
bleeding
It's
obvious.
so funny you say that, as Nigel Fairs, our dear friend, said exactly the same thing when he spoke to me. It's so fabulous. He'll listen to this and go, there we go. So true, though.
Yeah, it is true. I I think it's the most wonderful medium. I mean, they say the best films are on the radio. Because what you do is unleash your listener's imagination if it's done properly. And Nigel, is much more skillful at it all than I am, because he's got this amazing talent to do soundscapes and compose music and edit. And I don't know if he talked to you about Moira moments,
It wasn't
which,
in the process of being recorded when we did our podcast, but it's being released now. Yeah,
yeah,
it's something that everyone needs to listen to. That was,
oh,
I mean,
it's
you
just
can sell it better than me,
amazing.
but his the scope of that work, that audio drama, it's available now. It's on Spotify and other platforms if people want to look it
For
up. It's
free.
for free, yeah, and it's a huge ensemble cast audio drama set across multiple decades with so many plot lines, but it's all so cleverly written that it comes together. It's the scale of it all is remarkable.
He was inspired by a combination of It's a Sin and This Is Us. And if your
Mm,
listeners haven't watched either of those series, I highly recommend them as probably the best pieces of television to come out of the last time, well, since television was invented. Um, and he, especially It's a Sin, he loved that so much, and was lost in admiration of Russell T Davis's bravery in his writing. I think it inspired him to push the boundaries of his own ideas and talent. I just think I agree with you. It's a remarkable piece of work, all done for free, just to create, just
mm,
to and keep us all, us his close friends, keep
yeah.
us all happy during lockdown.
Yeah, getting that text from Nigel to ask me to read in that was, it's
Yeah,
just, he's
yeah,
such a lovely human being. He's one of those people, and I know everyone that's listening to this will have at least one person they know in the industry that is their own sort of Nigel Fairs. That person that does it all because they just love it. And the first people
yeah.
they think of to do it with are their friends and their loved ones. And it's just, I could gush about that man all night. He's a true gentleman. Um, as well as acting, you also write, and you also direct. I'd love to ask what motivated the decision to work in these other roles, and are there any ways of working that you saw as an actor when working with writers and directors that you took into your own work with your own writing and own directing?
Oh, an interesting question. Okay, we'll start with the writing. I've always written, but I never had the courage to claim the title writer. Um, and you can kind of thank Nigel. Sorry, we're back on Nigel again.
He's gonna
Fairs.
love this.
He runs every now and again. He runs a writers' retreat, and he's kind of my bestie, Nigel. He's my best friend, and I wanted to go on the retreat, but I thought, oh no, everyone else is a writer and I'm not, and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, I went along, and Nigel's only rule on the writing retreat is that nothing is negative. Sorry, that's a double negative, isn't it? Does that mean everything is, everything is positive? You're just not allowed to criticise in a way that isn't a positive. So it challenges you when you're giving feedback. But it does mean that you can just see everybody's confidence lifting throughout the week. And on the very last day, we are all encouraged to say what we think is best about every other member of the group. And on that last day, two of them, because I'd aired my fears about not being a writer, two of them went, that's just a nonsense. Of course you're a writer. Look at this, look at that, look at the other. And from there on in, then David Richardson asked if I would do a Doctor Who script. And I went, yes, as long as I can co-write it with Nigel. So we wrote The Abandoned. And then they said, would I write one on my own? So for Survivors. So I did. And I've been writing for them ever since. Yeah, I'm writing a Doctor Who at the moment, actually.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And because my character, oh no, I can't say that, because if anyone's coming to the Mousetrap, I have quite a lot of time off stage during the Mousetrap, so I'm going to use it to write.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I'll be doing a double job in the theatre.
Well,
The directing, I think the directing came about via teaching. I was asked if I'd go into a drama college, do a workshop. That developed into directing a final show, and that pushed itself forward into professionally directing. And I think what I've learned over the years is how not to direct. So when I've been on the receiving end of poor direction, and I've tried really hard not to bring those things into the room. And I'm still learning on that front. If you give me I have such confidence as an actor, give me any script and I could do something with it. I know I could. But writing, I don't have that confidence. I still feel a bit, what do they call it, imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
I feel I have a bit of imposter syndrome. In direction, I'm kind of halfway house. Sometimes I know I'm really good, and other times I think should have allowed the actor more freedom, or you've got that. It's like parenting. You've got that voice in your head all the time going, no, tell them off. No, don't tell them off. Make them go faster. How can I do this tactfully? How can I keep their confidence but change this? So you've got this little voice going the whole time.
I love that. And you've with your writing as well, that you, as you spoke about Nigel there, that you've had collaborators with your writing work, and someone you've collaborated with is Helen Goldwyn, with who you worked with on Attagirl and Attagirl 2 with Big Finish. What do you like about writing with someone else like Helen or Nigel, and have you got more work planned with Helen?
Oh yeah, Helen and I are halfway through a sitcom at the moment. We've got a film that we want to write, but we thought we'd better get our double act out there in the form of a very accessible sitcom. So every Sunday morning we meet on Zoom. We only do it one morning a week. And we've been quite prolific, actually, because it's such an intense time. We just get on with it, What I love about Helen is, Helen's a perfectionist. And she'll dot every I and cross every T and get all the timeline right and all the facts and the figures and the beats in the episode. And she's just such a brilliant craftsperson. And I'm like, oh, they've got to break down here. And, oh, that person's got to be murdered now. And, oh, let's have some blood and guts. And, oh, let's have her have a breakdown. And can you push that further? And so I think we're actually very well matched. So I can push the boundaries emotionally, perhaps, a bit more. And she can rein it in and go, that simply isn't going to work. We've got to do it this way. But we also, without realizing it, we get into an improvisation. And I do this with Nigel as well. We go, oh, then she can say blah, 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 blah. And then before we know it, we're doing the scene. And then we have to sort of scrabble away and start typing it all down before it's lost on the zeitgeist somewhere.
I love what you say about working in a collaboration as you work with almost opposing mindsets on things. But as if you can work with someone in that way positively, you make up what the other may or may not be, for want of a better word, lacking in, and that you make even better work as a team. Sometimes that's such a if you've got the patience to work with someone as a pair with something as exposing as writing. That must be such a thrilling way to work when you bounce off each other in those intense moments.
It's the yes and approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Never come in with a no but. Yes and. And you can still follow it with whatever no but you were going to say. But you just going in with it's like when you're directing, you say, oh, come, just move stage left a little and then I can see you. It's the same thing as saying, don't stand behind that chair. You're not visible. It's the same note, but it's given in such a way that the atmosphere in the room stays light and it's nothing but encouraging the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to talk about some of your acting work again. I've watched you in Vincent River at the Park Theatre, which transferred to Trafalgar, wasn't it? And
Yes.
you
Yeah.
starred opposite Thomas Mayhew in that, who's a remarkable young actor who I remember being
Yeah.
blown away by when I watched that show. His muscular like performance in that, in terms of his the weight he managed to give his character was extraordinary. And I've seen you in My Gay Best Friend at the Hope Theatre with our good friend Nigel Fairs as well. And both these plays, while the content's very different, both of them required you to go to some pretty extreme emotional places. And I'd love to ask if you have any advice for actors when working on that kind of material, anything that has such intense emotions, and how do you get yourself in a position where you can go to these places night after night legitimately without burning yourself out?
Uh, Just before I answer that, I'd like to give a shout out to Tom Mahi because he
Yeah.
had infinite patience with me because he got a 20-something brain and he learned his lines overnight
Hmm.
practically. And I really struggled with the text. Got it in the end, but it was a long haul. And he never once sighed or tutted or let me feel that he was in any way exasperated by my lack of speed. He was fabulous to work with. So just saying that, as is Nigel, of course, he's my Bessie. um, I use a technique, a Stanislavski technique called sense memory, which you probably know about.
Yes.
This stems way back to RADA, where we had to a full day's workshop where we had to find the moment in our life where we'd been angriest, happiest, saddest, all the extremes of emotions. Spend a long time getting ourselves back there, feeling it, coping with it, coming back to real life, going back into a different memory, coming back into real life. You can imagine there was furniture thrown, there were people crying, it was a really, really intense day. If you practice that, you can actually dip into your saddest memory in a nanosecond eventually. It might take you 2 or 3 hours first time you do it. So once you've got that ability, it's to do with taking off the layers, peeling away the onion, so that you're raw, so that there is nothing between you and the world, and then you can go there. This is where your director becomes really important, because if he or she isn't providing a safe space, it's impossible to take off that last layer of onion so that you can be emotionally naked. So you can dare to fail. And once you dare to fail, you will only succeed.
Yeah. I mean, it was just some of the stuff that you did on stage, and both your compatriots on stage in those performances is something that will stick with me for a while. I mean, Philip Ridley's text is always so
That
visceral, and
text, beautiful.
yeah.
It was like
The
an epic poem, really, wasn't it? I
hmm.
mean, it's not written like a poem, but it felt like you were in the middle of this, I don't know, storm at sea or something. Just
Yeah, I
like
think anger and grief in some plays and in some writing can be so as expected and so cliched. And what Philip Ridley does for me in terms of anger and grief and expression of that is so unique and so beautifully written. It must be a gift to get a script like that.
I'd been waiting for a script like that for a long time, and I said that at the audition or at the interview, and I think that's what swayed it for me. That he could see I was, hungry to really push the emotion, to really flex those actor muscles.
Yeah. I'd love to ask you about sort of audition nerves or pre-first night nerves, and that you've had such a vast amount of experience in this industry, and we briefly touched on this before we started recording tonight in regards to the Mousetrap, but we weren't recording then, so I'll probably go over that a little bit. Is the idea of, do you still get nervous before an audition or an opening night?
Yeah.
And
I don't really get nervous before an audition, not if I'm properly prepped, because you know you I'm not asked to memorize now, at this stage of my life. Although that said, I'm just about to invest in an auto cue because I think, self-taping seems to be the way everything's going. And I think an auto cue could save us all a lot of time.
oh yeah,
Just being
oh yeah.
lazy. Um, I know I don't really get audition nerves. I think either you're right or you're not right. There's not anything you can really do to make that to make that. Just prepare the best you can, give it your best shot, and then let it go. First night nerves, I have terrible first night nerves. They almost disappear from the second night onwards. I'm just kind of heightened. But that first night, I wish I knew what one could do, but I don't. It's horrible. I stand in the wings. I think of where the exit is every single time. I've done over 250 plays. And every single time I stood in the wings going, I could just run out now. I could just turn and run. And I don't know why I do this as a job. I'm going to go and be a delivery driver. Why am I doing this? It's that goes through your head every time.
Totally. It's that exact thing, isn't it? If you genuinely do go through every single practicality of, could I actually run away right now? Let's play
Yeah,
this out in
yeah,
my head. But you do. You go, okay, I could get a train ticket here, and I
yeah.
just get all the cash out of my bank account and no one could track me down. So whatever. And I just won't pick up the papers for a few days. It's fine. It's just it's remarkable you say that, because I reckon every actor has that kind of thing, apart from the few arseholes that either don't get first night nerves or won't admit to it for whatever reason. But they
But
I'd,
it's a brave thing to do. It's a really brave thing to do, especially in this automated world, to memorize 2 hours worth of language and to take it on stage and deliver it as if you're another person. You've got no safety net except you and your fellow actors. And I just think it is brave to
mm,
do that. But when it works and you
yeah.
can hear that collective breath holding. I heard recently that those moments where you literally can hear a pin drop in a
Mm,
2,000 seater. I heard that the audience's heartbeat starts to beat at the same rhythm. I
I've
do
heard this
hope
as
it's
well.
true
It's
because it's
so
certainly what it
lovely.
feels like.
It's something that you don't get, as you say, your first love theatre, and I think it's probably I mean, it is the same for me. Shamelessly, it's the same for me. That sitting in a space with people that you either don't know in the audience, or if you're on stage with actors but with people watching you've never met. There's nothing quite like it, and I can
No.
count on. I can recall so many times as an audience member, mainly when I've sat in an auditorium and not even the people that seem to cough their way through 3 hours worth of a play at the National will cough in that moment. Like there's
Yeah.
that sort of 20 to 30 seconds or longer in some extraordinary moments where it's just everyone is so present with whatever it
Yeah.
might be. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
And you come off stage and you can't quite remember what's happened, I've found.
Mm,
Because if you're on stage and you think, oh, this is going rather well.
Yeah.
It's gone. It's only if you are utterly invested, so in the present that you're not even making memories. I think that's when you touch the divine.
Mm. You've mentioned a bit about sense memory. Are there any other sort of methods for, I hate the terminology, what's your method? But are there any other sort of techniques or things that you do that you use to approach every character or piece of text you work on? Are there any things that you go, I get a new piece of text through, whether that's through an audition or through a role, this is what I go to?
I find uniting incredibly useful, and I've recently heard it renamed events. So you go through your text and you find where the events are, where the gear changes are, where the ante is upped, where there's a transformation of emotion on the stage, and to treat each unit uh, as a little play in itself, so that you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then a shift, and then a beginning, a middle, and end, and then a shift. And if you can mark all those technically, get them embedded into your emotions, then start learning the text, then you've done so much groundwork. The lines should slip in a lot easier.
Yeah, I really like that idea for uniting, because I think some people nowadays have almost a reluctance to go into what might be labeled as classical ways of breaking down text, even though you
Yes,
can,
classical.
you can adapt your own way of using uniting. Like it's not like Stanislavski's going to come out his grave and be like, "Why are you doing this?" or "Why are you doing that?" Like, it's you don't have to stick to a rigid method. That's what I love about what we do, is you can make a pick and mix to make your own way of working on text. And I remember, I think it was the director Ned Bennett described the how you what is a unit change. I think, I'm not sure if he nicked this from the actor and the target. I can't remember if it's a quote he said, but I remember him saying it to me in a workshop, that it's a sudden and significant change in temperature. And
Nice.
not meaning like literally, although if that did happen, that would be a unit change. But it's just such a wonderful description, because it definitely clarifies what's just a change in thought, and what's just a shift in conversation, and what is a unit change. That they are very different things.
This is why I quite like this last director I've worked with. She called it, This Is an Event. I quite like that because it kept the
Yeah.
energy, it didn't close anything down. It opened a door rather than closed one. I think uniting can sometimes um, slow down the thought process, whereas if it's an event, you're pushing forward. It's a subtle, tiny thing and probably wouldn't make much difference to many people, but
Mm.
I thought it was quite nice, energized way of describing it.
Yeah, it's almost just a linguistic shift, if anything, rather
Yeah,
than a
yeah,
practicality shift.
yeah.
I'd love to touch on the Mousetrap, as it's a play that you've done before. You did the UK tour, and doing the same role, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what's it like revisiting a play that you've done? Because although there'll be differences that come with a different director, have you found yourself making similar acting choices, or deliberately trying to go, "Oh, I did it that way before. Should I do it that way again?" What's it like?
I think Mrs. Boyle is pretty clear cut. Agatha Christie writes, I might get shot down for this, but almost cartoonesque characters. So it's
Hmm.
the skill of the actor is to flesh it out and make it real. She's genius at plotline and laying out the clues, etc. But to keep it realistic and um, to keep it three-dimensional is the actor's job. So I've made very similar choices, I have to say, because she doesn't give you an enormous amount to go on. But there has been a different style in directing. I think this is slightly more comedic. It's slightly pacier. She's
Mm.
slightly grumpier. So I think what he's done is taken what I've given him and just pushed it all a bit further, which is lovely. I do feel stretched by him. It's good.
That's great. And is it exciting being in one of the first shows that's
Yeah.
reopening theatre, at least in the West End? Because I think some people at the moment are forgetting theatre companies that have been producing stuff this whole time in one scale or another. But in terms of mainstream commercial theatre, is it exciting being part of that coming back?
Yeah, and just to stand on that stage, it's such a beautiful theatre, St. Martin's. good old-fashioned red velvet seats, those beautiful curved balconies. It's just standing on the centre stage looking out. It's just, yeah, it's heaven. I'm home. I've come home. I sit in those wings, which we all know are pretty grotty, threadbare carpet, and it's all a bit not manky. It's not the right word, but it's not, it's not cozied up with flowers
Well
and
worn.
yes, well worn. And I just thought, I'm so happy. This is exactly where I belong. And it's so unglamorous and practical. I love it.
That's great. And in July, you're going to be putting on your director boots again alongside Kat Rogers, a friend of ours, with her production company, Catalyst Productions, in a new writing festival, Beginnings. And that's going to be on at the Lion and Unicorn Theatre. And there are these plays that are going to be judged by an industry panel. How did you come about working on this, directing these plays? And how important do you think it is to have these new writing festivals or just to support new writing in general?
Well, we had this thought before lockdown of gathering in short plays. Love new writing, passionate about it, passionate about developing, especially women writers. The industry needs more and more, but they're growing.
Mm.
It's going in a very positive direction. So we gathered in about, I don't know, 50 or 60 plays. We read them. We chose our favourites, and we more or less agreed on all of it. We've found the working partnership to be very harmonious. Then lockdown happened, so we had some Zoom, and we gathered in 12 actors to cast across it. We've had some Zoom rehearsals. We're about to start in earnest, and literally the day I finish in the Mousetrap, which is arguably the world's longest running play, I will be working on 10 brand new pieces of writing. I love that juxtaposition of what this career can bring you.
Mm.
And we called it Beginnings, and it absolutely fits that title. It's not just the beginnings of maybe some writer's career, but the beginning of coming out of lockdown and all that entails for everybody. So yeah, it's rather I think it's going to be quite a profound evening. They're very varied pieces, and only one of them touches on the pandemic.
Mm.
There's a lot of comedy in there. It's going to be a great evening. I'm sorry we're only going to do it twice, actually. I think maybe next time we might look at a longer run, because I love those evenings of short plays, don't you?
Little scratch nights and things where it's
Yes.
almost the fact that a lot of the work isn't perfect is what's so exciting when you see the moments when, maybe it drags a little bit here, and then you get 5 minutes in the short play that you're like, this is it. This is it. That
Yeah.
moment where you're like, whatever the writer touched on there, I love that. Or the
Yeah.
actors taking parts that are only in a 10-minute short play, yet you want to know them for the whole night.
Yeah.
I love scratch nights, and I've been in a couple at Theatre 503 and loved every second I worked, and then a little new writing festival at the Arcola as well, with some lovely people. Lilac Yosefon and Izzy Dixon helped me with those, so shout out to those two. And they the new writing scratch nights. So I love new writing in general. I think that's where my passion lies. So I totally agree with you. Those scratch night evenings or short play evenings are so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And the adrenaline's very high, and the audience is always incredibly supportive because there are so many people involved. It's packed with mates and industry
Mm.
people, and it's just got fantastic buzz, networky buzz about it.
Totally. And as you say that, it's one of those things where, you're probably not going to get a random person come off the street to watch those plays. You're going to get people that love theatre, that are doing it, that are visiting these evenings because they are passionate about that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as you say, the atmosphere in the room is going to be, as you spoke of on that writer's retreat, it's going to be positive. It's going to be the
Yeah.
yes and atmosphere. And
Let's hope so.
oh, it will be. It will be. Um, I'd love to, although it might not be might not have been so smooth from the inside living it yourself, but from the outside, you've had such a sustained successful career in this industry, working across multiple mediums and in fantastic roles. How have you done that? How have
I'm
you
a
how have you
bit,
had that longevity?
I just think I'm a bit stubborn, you know. I'm a bit
Mm.
like the trickiest time I think came just after EastEnders, like the beginning of this century, and I ended up doing 15 tours in 10 years because that was kind of all that was on offer, and I had this mortgage to pay, and I just thought I just would not let the profession give me up. Then I let my hair go white, and the phone hasn't stopped. It's interesting, isn't it? I finally kind of gave in. I've just had my 70th. I just gave in to being old. And I don't think there are too many wrinkly actresses about because of the whole, Botox decisions or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I remember Eileen Atkins saying to me, "Don't have a facelift, don't do anything, because nobody can find a wrinkly actress."
It's
So,
just
and she said my phone doesn't stop, so I took her advice. Hey,
I absolutely love that. I'd love to finish by, we've spoken about so much that you've done, so much that you're doing and will do this year. Just like to ask if you have anything else that we haven't mentioned coming up this year, or anything actually you'd like to do in the future.
well, what my big ambition at the moment is to get this sitcom finished, and
Mm,
of course there are parts in it for Helen and myself,
of course.
uh, and to get hopefully get another producer on board. But if not, we might just do it ourselves. Go the Fleabag route.
Yeah,
We'll see. We'll see. So that there's life in the old girl yet. I think,
absolutely.
yeah, a small role in a good comedy that would just suit me down to the ground. And I was saying this to Helen, and she said the same. So we said, well, let's write it, and here we are writing it.
I think that's great. The idea that, I'm such a champion of is if people aren't giving you the opportunities that you want for one way or another, or even if you are being successful, if it's not quite what you want, do it yourself. You're more than capable of doing it yourself. I think that's such a lovely, lovely message to.
I don't know about. I don't know. We'll see. Talk to me again in a year's time. I go,
We can't
why the did I do this?
we can't end this on doubt, Louise. We can't. I love it. Thank you so much for talking to me this evening. It's been a
Pleasure,
real
treasure.
pleasure. Thank you so much, and best of luck with the Mousetrap and everything you've got going on this year. I'll be cheering from the stalls. So thank you so
Thanks,
much.
darling. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our podcast.
We hope you enjoyed it and learned something.
We look forward to having you back in the room very, very soon.